Okay. So good afternoon, good evening, good morning. Hello, everybody. You are all very welcome to a new Bridge Writers of ISIC, a very special edition today. First of all, thanks to our guest and to the very interesting topic because, well, who has not self-victimized at least one in their life? And then, due to the format, today's bridge will last longer than usually. We will have 3 hours and a short break of 5 minutes at a time. Therefore, we are here with Liliana Alexander and Regina Schutz, and with our guest, César Machado, who will talk about his book, Anti-Victimization, a Foundation for Self-Evolution. Book that we have in English, translated in English by Sergio Fernandes and revised by Jeff Lloyd. A book that, at least for me, is in top 10 conscientiology books to be read in a lifetime. Before I give the floor to our guest, let me introduce him briefly. César Machado is graduate in medicine by the State University of Londrina and holds specialist titles in internal medicine and palliative medicine by the Brazilian Society of Internal Medicine. He is currently a medical doctor of the Oncological Palliative Care Service at the Londrina Cancer Hospital in Londrina, Paraná, Brazil. He is born in Ibipora, Paraná, Brazil. He started studying conscienciology in Londrina in 1993 and has undertaken voluntary work since 1996. He became a conscienciology teacher and a conscienciological researcher in 1999 and a Penta practitioner in 2006. He is the author of the books Evolutionary Proactivity from the Perspective of Self-Conscientiotherapy, published in 2014, and Parapsychic Humanization in the ICU, Comprehensive Critical Patient Care, published in 2017, co-authorship with Stephanie Sabetsky. He worked as a conscienciotherapist for the International Organization of Conscienciotherapy between 2006 and 2014. Since 2014, he has undertaken voluntary work for the International Union of Conscienciology Writers, UNIESCON, in the city of Foz do Iguaçu, Paraná, Brazil. We'll start now, but not before telling you that your questions are very welcome anytime. César will answer you anytime. So we are waiting for your questions. And now, César, the microphone is yours.
Okay. Do I put the presentation or? Sure. Yes? Let's see here. Okay. Is it okay? You're seeing
Perfect.
The presentation?
Yes,
okay.
You just need to put in presentation mode, right?
Okay,
Perfect.
Now I think it is.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Adina, for the presentation. And first of all, I would like to thank ISIC and all the volunteers that are doing this work, the work of translating the books to English, and this work of allowed us, author, to have this opportunity of being here with you and talk about the books and how is it to write books on conscientiology. That is the main objective of this presentation today. And I would like to thank Sergio and Jeffrey. I don't know, I think Liliana told me that Jacqueline helped too on the revision. I don't know. You have
Probably,
told that.
probably.
Yeah, I don't know.
Because
But,
we generally work very, very close together. So
yeah, on the book, I know Sergio and Jeffrey that
yeah.
do that work, but maybe other volunteers have helped to do the translation revision too. But it's okay. And of course, thank you all for this opportunity of being here and to talk about this subject. The main objective of this presentation is to talk about how did I write the book, okay? So we'll focus most of the presentation on the way I made the research and the writing. And of course, we'll use the example of the book, Anti-Victimization, to talk about this, I don't know if techniques or way of research and writing, let's put on this term. And as Adina has told us, you can be free to interrupt and make questions or bring your point of view, anything you want during the presentation. So you're really free to interrupt anytime you want. You know, Stephanie jokes a lot with that I start to talk and I don't stop. So maybe you have to interrupt me. Sometimes I start to talk and I go on the ideas in a row, let's say like this, and so feel really comfortable to interrupt anytime you want. Okay. So first of all, Adina has made a presentation of most important points of my life regarding this condition of conscientiology and anti-victimization writing, but I would like to just to complement that. It's important for you to know that this book is about self-research, first of all, and I will bring to you why I think it's important if you want to study a weak trait or some dysfunctional behavior or something like this. I think considering conscientiology, it's important to put your self-research on it and why it's important. Yeah, so that's why I put the first topic here at this presentation. So the book has this part that is in it. Of course, that's a way of writing. You don't need to expose yourself specific on your writing, but your writing, you are there at your book. That what we see on conscientiology is very common. Okay, it's important. Another important point here is this condition of volunteering as a consciential therapist, because the idea of the book came from this work as a consciential therapist. That I stayed there from 2006 until the beginning of 2014. And my graduation in medicine is important too, because this way of research and writing that I will talk about has a lot of interaction and analogy with the way of medicine, medical study of disease. And I didn't invent it. Consciential therapists that were before me at OIC use this way to study, because consciential therapists are composed by psychologists and medical doctors and physicians. So we have this way of researching that come from consensual therapy. That is a way to do it, okay? So that what I'm going to talk about here today, and give you an idea of how you can use it on your research and writing too, okay? The book Anti-Victimization was published, the first edition 2016, but I started to research, self-research before this, maybe in 2012, 2013, and then I was at OIC by the time, and I started to study cases that come for us of evolucientes. I don't know if you have this, we have this term in English.
Evolutions. Yeah, evolutions.
Evolutions. Okay. So observing the evolutions too during the assistance we did on consensual therapeutic set, and took my notes during after that, and of course I used that to confront, as I want to tell you, with my self-research and have ideas to write down the things I wrote on the book. Of course, this way of writing, I first I use it on my first book, Evolutionary Proactivity, that was published in 2000 and the end of 2013. The book is 2014, but that was at the end of 2013. And the idea of the first book was when you are training to become a consensual therapist, you have to pass as evolution, and after that you have to make a course with them, and to train and to become a consensual therapist. And at the end of the course, you have to present a kind of paper. Today, I think it's a paper, but by the time we have to do a kind of monography. It was a bigger thing, and that the subject I took was proactivity, evolutionary proactivity, and that I turned into my first book. I expanded and turned it on my first book, and inside my first book, I put most of the ideas we are going to talk today. So they're all there, but in Portuguese, unfortunately. And but of course, as we were joking at the beginning, before the transmission, you can put on Google, and maybe you can have the translation in English for those who doesn't speak Portuguese. But I put the main ideas here. So inside my first book are these ideas that I used to develop this way of research and writing that I took from consensual therapy, and I wrote some chapters about consensual therapy that you can find in my first book. So return to anti-victimization. So this book, my first one and this one too, are about consensual therapy stage. So this is the way I used to write these two books, and we are going to talk about it just in a minute. I would like to just to explain for you why I put the anti-victimization like as a foundation for self-evolution, and the subtitle of the book. So I think there is this important relation between anti-victimization and evolution. And why is that? As we study about self-victimization and anti-victimization, you can see that a self-victimization behavior is something that is anti-evolution. Why? And why is that? Because self-victimization leads to passivity, and to evolve yourself, you need to be proactive. You have to make movements on your life of self-researching, for example, recycling your behaviors, and knowing more about yourself, about your energies, and knowing about your parapsychic skills, develop that. And this you need to make movement. You need to be, you need to look for things that make you evolve yourself, let's say like this. And self-victimization leads to passivity. And why is that? Because it locks or stagnates, freezes you in the past. That's a common thing to a self-victimizing consciousness, because most of the time, a self-victimized consciousness keep themselves, let's say, locked on past facts, things that happened, that frustrated this consciousness. We will talk a little bit more during the presentation about this. And then the end leads to passivity, to stagnation, instead of moving on. That is something that anti-victimization needs from a person who wants to overcome the condition of self-victimization. So anti-victimization leads to self-evolution on the other hand, because leads to proactivity, demands action, movement, focus on solutions, self-confrontation. So that's why I decided to put this. I think it's the important point of the book, anti-victimization as a foundation for self-evolution. That's what we are all seeking as we are studying conscientiology and want to evolve ourselves, and who knows, sometimes doesn't need to reborn anymore. That's one of the ideas of this. And just I don't, let me see here how I minimize you, because it's okay. I discovered it. So here is another important point, the definition of self-victimization, but not the definition of self-victimization, but I characterize it as a syndrome. And why is that? So here I bring you the definition. Self-victimization syndrome is the pathological condition or morbid state characterized by a clinical condition in which conscients predominantly victimize themselves, complain, and or self-deprecate in face of challenges of human lives. You see, when we analyze only these parts, we can see that is not something that maybe we will have just one cause for it. And that's why I decided to call it a syndrome and not only a weak trait, like a self-victimization as a weak trait, for example. So when we pass the presentation, maybe will be more clear this condition for you. But what I want to say to you is that syndrome is something that we use to describe some conditions, some medical conditions that have more than one cause or more than one roots of functioning. So when I analyze the self-victimization condition, I saw that we can have different ways that self-victimized consciousness can have a behavior that leads to different lines, different routes. So of course, different causes too. That's why I call it as a syndrome, not only a weak trait that or something like this. Okay, and just continue here on the definition. So a conscient predominantly victimize themselves, complain and or self-deprecate in face of challenges of human life, getting evolutionary paralyzed, as I told you just before, due to self-inculcation, dramatization, weak traits approach, ego self-defense mechanisms. And what is interesting here is the condition of transfer the responsibility of their own attitudes onto others. Okay, so this is something that is really important, as we are going to see during the presentation. So you can call this syndrome self-deprecation syndrome, self-devaluation syndrome, self-punishment syndrome. All these you can see that are related to self-deprecate. Okay, the self-deprecation, self-evaluation, self-punishment. This is a way of self-victimizing yourself. Other way is the complaining part, lamentation, whining, something like this. And of course, there is the condition of self-victimizing yourself, or put yourself as a victim, what leads you to transfer the responsibilities of your attitudes to others, okay? So this is a summary of what self-victimization syndrome should be. As we said, self-victimizing syndrome, you can divide it into 3 components: the self-deprecation, complaint, and self-victimization. Okay, self-victimization I put as a part of it, although it's the same name of the syndrome, but it's the condition of put yourself as a victim, feeling injustice and put yourself as a victim of things that happen to you, and this will lead you to stay, as we said, locked, freeze, or stagnate in fast facts and things that happen to you. When I start to study and compose this presentation, there is one other component that maybe I put it on the book, but maybe should be here at the definition too. There is the tendency that sometimes some types of consciousness may have, that is the aggressive part, the aggressiveness and arrogance, we can say it like this. So maybe this is important component too, because there are lots of consciousness with self-victimizing behavior that tends to self-deprecation and self-punishment, and not to be aggressive with others. But many times the aggressive is the most important component that can show on a self-victimized person, because the tendency of put as we told you here, the definition, the responsibilities for your attitudes onto others, for things that happens with you onto others, and a way to defend yourself, as we say here, ego self-defense, is to be aggressive. So this is maybe we should put it here too as a component of this definition. Okay. I don't know if any one of you wants to make any points now. If it's okay, we are going to move on, because now I'm going to enter into the self-conscious therapy research method. That is the method of research and writing that I used on this book, Anti-Victimization, and then I will start to explain, divide it in parts, these subjects that I use to research and write, for you to understand them. The idea is that you can understand and use on your research too. Okay. If anyone, no one of you have any question until now, so I'm going to move on. Okay. Self-conscious therapy research method. So this is what I used on my first book and this book too, as a way to make self-research, conscientiological self-research and writing. Okay, and when I talk about this way, this method of research and writing, I divide it in 2 aspects that I think we need to consider. One part is the parapathology study. So you see on the book, if you have a quick look on the summary, you see that I talk about parasemiology, paraphysiopathology, paradiagnosis, and paretiology too. So these components they are part of a parapathology study that you can use when you're researching or writing about a syndrome, a weak trait, or a dysfunctional behavior that you're studying, any kind of subject like this that you're studying. Okay, so I will pass through each of these components as we pass through the presentation. Okay, but this is important that I'm bringing here to you just for you to know that we are going to talk about these aspects during the presentation. And another part of it, consider these aspects, these two aspects. The second one is the self-consensual therapy stages or phases. This is what we use to do the self-consensual therapy, and to facilitate it, to do this kind of research, is divided in parts. So we have 4 stages of self-consensual therapy that are self-investigation, self-diagnosis, self-confrontation, and self-overcoming. I'm going to talk about this, bring you the definition of each of these subjects, and do this interaction with this first aspect that is the parapathology study, and that are all these 4 subjects too. And just to have a quick to synthesize this interaction to you, when you talk about self-consensual therapy research method, we can do this interaction between that first aspect, the parapathology study, and the second one, that is the self-consensual therapy stage or phase. So you can see that in the first part of the book, the first section, I used to make this study. I think it was important. We know that the title of the book is anti-victimization, but when we are going to study a parapathology and link with how can you confront and overcome the situation, and then I bring the anti-victimization as this condition. But I think it's important for us to understand what is the disease, let's say like this, or the weak trait, or the dysfunctional behavior, or the parapathology that you're studying, in order for you to what I want with this, that the reader, when he is reading the book, that he can be able to understand what is self-victimization, and of course look if he has any of this behavior on his day-to-day, on his manifestation. Okay, so that's why I put it on the first part of the book, this study of parapathology. That's a way of writing and researching that you can do like this too, if you're researching any kind of subject that that is a weak trait or a parapathology. Okay, and so what I'm doing here is to make this interaction between those two aspects. So the stages of consensual therapy, self-consensual therapy. So the first stage, that is self-investigation. How can we do the self-investigation of a weak trait, or a syndrome, or a parapathology? So how can we do that? By the study of the parasemiology and paraphysiopathology. I'll explain for you what does these terms mean and how can you do that, okay? And the second part, the second way, is the second interaction is about the second stage of self-consensual therapy. That is the self-diagnosis. So you make your self-investigation, investigate yourself, and try to find signs, symptoms, the functional mechanism, that what is happening with you, in order to get you the diagnosis, the paradiagnosis. So the sequence of it is you made the self-investigation, and then you go to the study of self-diagnosis. So you can get to the paradiagnosis and paretiology, or the cause of cause of what is happening with you. Okay, and here, of course, we will bring you the examples of anti-victimization to clear all these aspects to you. Okay. At the second part of the book, then I go to the study of anti-victimization, and okay, of course, the self-confrontation of anti-victimization. So at the second part, you can see that have some chapters there, but these two I put here is, I think, two that you can use in any research that you're doing, considering the self-consensual therapy research method, okay? That is, to study the consensual therapeutic self-prescription and paratherapeutic technique. So this, I put it on the second part of the book when you study about self-confrontation. You can see that we are not talking about parapathology anymore. That first aspect that I brought to you, let's just put back here. So these four aspects I use to study parapathology, so it is in the first part of the book. Okay, parasemiology, paraphysiopathology, paradiagnosis, paretiology, and these four subjects are in these two parts here. The first two stages of self-consensual therapy that are self-investigation, self-diagnosis. Okay, and then when you go to the second part, you want to study how to overcome this condition of self-victimization and to be an unvictimized person or consciousness. So we study self-confrontation first, and I think these two chapters that are in the book, you can use these ideas in any kind of study that you're doing, considering parapathology study, okay? And the last part of the book, we study about self-overcoming. It's the last stage of self-consensual therapy, and where I talk about some subjects, but these two chapters, I think, you can use on any kind of research you're doing. Okay, the rhinological paraprophylaxis we will talk about further, and parameter of self-overcome. Probably it's a little bit complex now, but we are going to talk more about each of these parts and this interaction, bring you examples too, and again, feel free to interrupt anytime you want, okay? Here's something that I talk about it at the beginning of the presentation. That is the suggestion that I made for researchers and writers, considering, of course, consensuological researching and writing. If you want to research a parapathology, that's idea that I have. You don't need to do this all the time. Maybe you have, I don't know, a strong trait, and the weak trait concerning this strong trait will be something like this. And you want to study that because you want to help people who has that problem. That's not a problem too. You can do that too. But I think that's more productive for us as consensuological researchers. If you considering that we want to evolve ourselves, to study something that is concerned to us too. So choose something that you want and need to overcome in yourself. And that's what I did on this book too, anti-victimization. So I took a subject that is self-victimization, identified that I have some behaviors that was self-victimized consciousness would do. So I start to study this condition on me first, and then I was, how I told you, at ISIC by that time, and then I start to observe that on evolutions too. So I start to take notes and confront my self-research with the hetero research, as I put you here. So conscientiology, you take a parapathology, you do the self-research, and then I start to observe that and do the active research. Of course, you don't need to be on a self-consciential therapy set to study another consciousness. You know, we can do that all the time with people we live with on our work, on our family. But even when we are walking on streets and at the supermarket, at the airport, as you can see on the book, and I brought you some examples here too about these common things that can happen on everyone's life, and probably you can find that specific behavior that you are researching anywhere in any place you are, okay? Your family, work, and on your day-to-day. So that's a suggestion that I do, considering conscientiological research, okay? Then after that, you can make comparison, take conclusions, and then you will have ideas to write the things, put the things on paper. Well, so let me come back here. Okay. So here I bring you the definition of self-investigation. So here you entered all those ideas that I just brought to you right now, that two aspects, the self-consciential therapy states, and first of all, you study the parapathology study, make this interaction with the self-consciential therapy states. So what could be a definition of self-investigation? This I took from my first book, as I told you at the beginning, Evolutionary Proactivity, okay? So these definitions, how did I define it? Self-investigation is the stage of self-consciential therapy in which the consciousness has as the main objective the systematic, rigorous investigation of its own consciential micro-universe in search of a greater understanding of its parasigns, parasymptoms, and intraconsciential function mechanisms. As we are going to see, when you talk about parasigns and parasymptoms, we are talking about parasemiology. That's what we are going to see just in a moment. And when we talk about interconsciential function mechanisms, we are talking about paraphysiopathology, okay? I will bring all this for you to make it more clear, okay? But when we talk about self-investigation, that's what we want, okay, to understand when you're studying parapathology, what are the parasigns or parasymptoms behind it, and the interconsciential function mechanisms, okay? So how can you investigate or self-investigate a parapathology? So I used on my two books, first books and anti-victimization, I used that too, and you can see specific chapters talking about these issues, these subjects. So parasemiology, when you are talking about parasemiology, we are talking about parasigns and parasymptoms. And how can we study that? We can study that by the holosome study. That's a way that you can easy study the parasemiology of a parapathology or a weak trait that you're studying. So you're going to look for parasigns and parasymptoms, considering your soma, energosoma, psychosoma, and mental soma. Of course, to be more pragmatical, you can forget this aspect of parasign, because when we analyze conscientiology, you know, we took this from medicine too. So you have the semiology, that is the study of signs and symptoms when you study a condition that can lead to different causes on medicine. it's a group of signs and symptoms. But in medicine, this is clear, is more clear as this division. And when you consider consciousness, and you see that Valdo Vieira, who proposed this term, parasemiology, he considered that the unit of measure of parasemiology, what synthesized parasemiology, is the parasymptom. Okay, he doesn't mention parascience. And what is that? Just to make clear for those who are not on health professionals or medical doctors, for example, we divide this like this. What is a sign, considering medicine? A sign is something that, let's suppose that I have a disease, and there's some things that I can describe to a physician, things that I'm feeling, that we consider as symptoms, things that me, as a person with a disease, I can feel, I can express, I can give words for that. Something that I, as a sick person, let's say like this, I can identify. And sign are all those things that I would not be able to identify. For example, you need external tools for that. For example, I can tell you how much is now my blood pressure, for example, my heart rate, my temperature. So you need tools to identify that, and that are all signs. Okay. Sometimes we can find signs by listening lungs, listening your heart, for example, and you can find signs. There are things that you're not able to identify by yourself and say, no. For example, you should have an arrhythmia, and you can feel something on your chest, but you can't say you have an arrhythmia. You need a physician to go there and to listen for your heart and see that, oh, you have an arrhythmia. So we can bring this to conscientiology too when you study parasemiology. For example, when we consider, for example, self-optimization, let's say. So I know, for example, when something happens to me that frustrates me, and I can tell, now I'm frustrated. And that's something that I, for sure, I can feel and understand and say that I'm feeling frustrated. But for example, maybe if you have that condition of self-optimization, sometimes what happens, considering the emotional changes that you have, you may have sometimes some energy blockades, for example, a heart blockade. And if you don't have the parapsychic skills, probably you won't be able to identify that on you. So if you have someone, a tool, like I told you, let's consider that this cardiochakra blockage is my blood pressure, to make analogy. Okay, so I can't identify that my blood pressure. That's a sign. You need a tool here, my arm to measure that. And if I'm not able to identify that heart blockage, that's a cardiochakra blockage. Sorry, you need a parapsychic person to make the auric coupling, for example, and to identify that you have that. So we will be able to say to you, you need to work your energies. You have a blockage here at your cardio chakra, for example. So we can say that should be a sign or a parasign, because me as a diseased person, I'm not able to, I don't have the parapsychic tool to, for example, identify that blockage on myself. But if we consider that we are all evolving ourselves, okay, let's just make, probably this is something more philosophical than practical, but if you consider that we are all evolving ourselves, and who knows, sometimes we will be able to understand ourselves deeper, and to to analyze our energy, energy of environment, intrusions, develop this parapsychic skills. So this blockage will not be a sign anymore, but a symptom, because you will be able to identify that on yourself. Okay. So in my mind here, doing something philosophical, I would say that considering conscienciology and consciousness that is much more complex than our physical body, maybe everything we should call just as parasitum, and forget this condition of parasite, because someday probably we will be able to identify those things, those blockades, for example, on ourselves, if you continue working, develop our parapsychs, and develop our capacity, ability of feeling our own energies and other energies too. So I think maybe that's why Professor Valdo just considers the parasitum as a unit of measure. I don't know if I was maybe a little bit complex here in my explanation, but that's just to make analogy. When we consider semiology on medicine, we have signs and symptoms, because on our body there's some kind of thing that we're not able to identify. But consider consciousness and evolution, maybe today there are some kind of things that for me I can't identify on myself, and maybe someone that has more developed parapsychics could identify that on me. But what I expect is that as I evolve myself, that everything becomes a sign for me to a parasite. I will be able to understand what is happening with all my holosoma, my vehicles of manifestation. Okay, so this is parasemiology. I will bring you some examples to be more clear. But let's talk a little bit about paraphysiopathology. This is what we call interconsciential function mechanism. Okay, so what is this? This is the common root of reactions and adaptations caused by, here I put self-victimization, but caused by any kind of parapathology. This we brought from medicine too, from medical study. When you study a pathology, body, soma pathology, disease, we study the physiopathology, that is the study of the disease functioning mechanism, or what are the reaction and adaptations that some pathological condition cause on our body. For example, to make analogy, medical analogy again, if you have high blood pressure, this high blood pressure, as the time pass by, will make that your heart make stronger contractions, and these strong contractions probably will make that your heart muscle, as adaptation, become thicker. Okay, so this is adaptation that the physiopathology of this high blood pressure can cause. And as this this muscle become thicker, the electrical part of the heart, that we have an electrical part that give the rate of our heart, may have problem too, and probably start to have another reaction or adaptation, that is arrhythmia. That is a way to try, the heart tries to win this thick muscle. Okay, so when we compare to consciousness, we can say what? For example, a person that is self-victimized may have some kind of reactions and adaptations that leads at the end to something. And this common root is something that we can study to and identify, because sometimes you can create techniques, as you will see further on this presentation, specific to act in a specific point of of the parapathology, okay? So that's why we make this study. And you see that I have a chapter here on the book too, specifically to talk about paraphysiopathology of self-victimization. Of course, sometimes you not have only one specific route, but you can have parallel routes, ramifications or branches that all work different aspects, but that leads to common cause, for example. And the study of physiopathology in medicine, or paraphysiopathology, consensual therapy and self-consensual therapy, is for us to understand, and who knows, we can get to the origins or the cause of the problem. For example, if I have a self-victimized behavior, if I study this holosoma study, for example, para symptoms, what happens on my body, my energosoma, what happens, psychosoma, mental soma, and then I start to understand a little bit more about this, and then I start to understand that one behavior, for example, the reaction when you have something that frustrated you, leads me, probably you'll be able to understand this chain of reaction and start to act to interrupt this chain of reaction. That's the idea of studying this interconsensual function mechanism, considering a parapathology. So I want to understand, for example, how a self-victimized person reacts, adapts itself, considering me, of course, with aspects that I may have about self-victimization, and the readers too, so he can get to this way of reacting and adapting itself to understand what is beyond this or behind this, the cause of the self-victimization in your specific case, okay? And as we understand these roots, probably you'll be able to make prescriptions, as you see at the second part of the presentation, considering self-confrontation. So you'll be able to make self-prescriptions and create techniques to act and interrupt this kind of reactions and adaptations caused by a parapathology, considering here self-victimization, okay? Maybe if we move on, it will be easier for you to understand, but if anyone wants to make any questions now, feel free to, okay? As I told you at the beginning, you can interrupt anytime you want, okay? So moving on here, when you talk about self-investigating the self-victimization syndrome, so we have to talk about the definition of parasemiology, okay? And here specifically the parasemiology of self-victimization. So if you just take the word self-victimization out of the definition, you have the definition of parasemiology, okay? So parasemiology is the parapsychic and consensometric study of signs and symptoms, considering your body, and parasigns and parasymptoms, or maybe, philosophical speaking, only parasymptoms, manifested by the self-victimized conscience in a verbal or non-verbal way, aiming at anatomizing and mathematizing and diagnosing a condition, okay? So I put here the self-victimization, the middle of the definition. So you have the definition of parasemiology of self-victimization. So what we want here, to make a parapsychic study, considering your energies, for example, and extra-physical things that should be happening with you. And of course, consensometric study too. For example, the holosoma study, that is a consensometric study, when you study the symptoms, so the parasymptoms that are happening with you, considering your body, your soma, your energosoma, your psychosoma, and your mental soma too. And the idea is exactly to anatomize, anatomize this condition of the parapathology, or here the self-victimization, and help to diagnose, or the reader, when he's reading your book, to diagnose that condition, okay? So as I told you before, the unit of measure, or what synthesizes the condition of parasemiology, is the parasymptom, okay? You can find this issue on this subject on Homo sapiens urbanizatus at page 466 from Professor Valdo, okay? There he talks about this. And what is interesting here when we talk about parasemiology and parasemiology of self-victimization, that we will address the anatomization of self-victimization under the optics of parasymptomatology, okay? Or in other words, the study of parasymptoms, the parasymptomatology, seeking understanding through the dissection. Here are underlined to emphasize for you the dissection of traits. This is what you have as variables to study any kind of condition you're studying. So you study parasemiology, you study traits, attitudes, tendencies, predispositions, manifestations, reactions, temperament, in addition to study of course, of absent traits true or traits absent from one's consensual profile. So these aspects, all you can use to make the study of the parasemiology concerning the subject you're studying, in my case, self-victimization, and of course, considering the holosoma for our vehicles of manifestation, of consciousness manifestation. So just to bring you as example here, when you talk about parasemiology of mental soma, for example, and considering here the examples I brought you are from the book and the condition of self-victimization. For example, put it here, reduced self-criticism, an evident inability to perform critical self-evaluation, and of course, that's why happen self-punishment, self-deprecation, self-devaluation. So this is an evident inability to perform critical self-evaluation, because all of us, we have weak traits and we have strong traits too. So it's impossible for us only to have weak traits and consider ourselves of something low than other consciousness and not having abilities or capacities or anything of this. And tending to severity into heteroevaluation too is another part of this condition of reduced self-criticism. Because when things happen with a self-victimized person, it's common to overreact and to be aggressive with other person, considering that what happened, for example, with me, if I consider myself a self-victimized person, what happened to me, it's another consciousness guilty or responsibility. So the tendency is to criticize with severity another consciousness and being tolerant, and of course being tolerant to criticism too, to accept a critics from other person too. This is just to bring us as an example of what should be what could be a parasymptom considering mental soma. So reduced self-criticism. Other things, low self-perception. I think the two of them have interactions, are linked. So a reduced capacity to examine oneself regarding self-conscientiometry due to focusing on heteroconscientiality, that is focusing on others. It's the same thing, okay? Or it's really close to the first condition, reduced self-criticism. They are really linked, and this condition of low self-perception. And if you go into my first book, you see that considering self-consensual therapy, there is a chapter there about self-perception, because self-perception is a base, it's a foundation to self-consensual therapy and, of course, any kind of self-research. First of all, you have to stop and start to make reflection and perceive yourself. You have to make these movements of self-perception. And for that, you have to stop to analyze yourself. But it's important to say that a self-optimized person has this condition, tendency or condition of low self-perception, because most of the time when getting frustrated, stay, as I told you before, stagnate on that fact that happened, that the self-optimized person see as something that was not okay, it was not her guilt, this conscious thing is not her guilty, the responsibility from others. So this all make more difficult to put your self-perception on a higher condition. Okay, so this is important. Okay, yes.
May I have a short question here?
Yes, okay.
If I understand right, the things you are describing here is to keep with your analogy that you brought, the thicker heart muscle, right? So that what you can see, what is being built through the self-victimization. Could I say like that, more or less?
Yeah. Yes. You can say like that. So
Okay.
it's something that because of your ways of reacting or behaviors, probably you will develop or build some other things on your way of your way of functioning.
Mm-hmm.
And the way you react to things, the way you react to things in life, you react to other person when they came to you and criticize you on something that they think that is not okay, for example, or other things. Okay, but these are ways that you develop as a mechanism of self-defense. Maybe we can say like this too. Okay.
Okay, so we can kind of how can I say to adapt this to other parapathologies, right? We can try to take this turn. We can try to take this turn about finding the thicker heart muscle, right?
Exactly. That's the idea. If you take my first book, I analyze the condition of accommodation. I don't know if that's the best translation, but considering evolutionary proactivity, I study the condition of passivity or accommodation, and that there is a specific mechanism of functioning there too, that you can see, that is different of what happens when you are self-victimized person, and probably in other conditions that you are going to study. But the idea is that you can apply this to any kind of parapathology. That's the idea.
Great.
César, in the sequence of that, could we say that low self-perception is sometimes used as a
wrong way,
kind of ego defense mechanism as well?
Yes, you can say that. And as you're going to see, that's why when we achieve the cause of the self-victimization, the paraetiology, as we are going to see, one of the causes are exactly egocentrism, okay? Because the mechanism of functioning has this that leads to egocentrism.
Kind of
really
compensation,
important.
and also sometimes to avoid the guilty feeling or something like that. And then you invest as in the an ego mechanism and do not
Yes.
invest in your self-perception.
Yes, that's true.
And
That happens too.
I also was, I'm wondering if subjectivity is also related with ego defense, because subjectivity always intervene when we are in this process of self-investigative. Always subjectivity is the first who came out in this process. And I think that subjectivity is related also with ego defense.
You say subjectivity of something that is
It's subjective and not objective. It's about consolation, subjectivity.
That is, it's internal. It's your way of seeing things. It's what you're trying to say. Is that?
Yeah. No.
Instead of being objective of the situation, you are just seeing your way. So you're that subjectivity
okay.
in that aspect.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
I can
yes.
see
That's
like
what you
that
say,
too.
Mickey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can put in that terms too. We can say that too. That can be a way of understanding what I'm trying to say here. I think that's the way. That can be a way to, let's say that you have your own ideas about things, and yeah, when the situations occur, most of the time, considering a self-victimized person, it's really common to want to have their idea to be the one that is the correct one.
But that is probably also connected with the point 3 that you have here of some monoideism. The person goes into a certain kind of monoideism instead of being able to be open to see, you know.
That's another thing it's inside this mechanism of functioning too, that you stay stagnate on what happened, then you go to monoides. That can happen too.
And that's how you can get close.
Yes,
that's how you can
close. But that is one kind of route that a self-optimizing person can have to, considering these mechanisms. And monoideism is there too. Okay, and then was the next topic here, monoideism, but so this repeated
idea of perpetuating conflict,
involving happenings related to a certain concern, fixed ideas, and the consciousness state.
It's like a loop, you know. Some ideas
fixing
can be
on
like
what
loop.
happens. Stay fixed on what happened, and that will perpetuate this this behavior, this posture, or this way of manifesting themselves, like a conflictive way many times, or with self-punishment too. That is the other way to this happen. Another route, let's say like this, another common route. Okay, I don't know if it's okay till now. Can you move on? Okay.
Yes.
So here I brought another examples considering this holosoma study. Probably will maybe will be a little bit repetitive, but just to give an idea of psychosoma manifestations, considering self-optimization, considering this kind of study. So we consider here the tendency to dramatization, for example, that is this exacerbation of personal emotional manifestation. That's what I was talking about, sometimes to be, we can say, aggressive on what is happening by that time, or with other people, for example. And by this dramatization, try to draw attention and have the point of view prevailing. That can be a way of doing that too. Sometimes this is interesting too. When you talk about self-optimization, we can say that when you consider the tendency of self-deprecate, self-punishment, for example, self-devaluation, it's really easy to see that this consciousness may have low self-esteem, for example, and this tendency to look only for weak traits. But sometimes when dramatization comes on and this aggressiveness shows up, sometimes people see that self-optimized as an arrogant person, but maybe if you do not analyze a little bit better, you may understand that that is a person with a strong personality, for example, but in fact it isn't. When you consider that as a part of self-optimization, we see that this dramatization, in fact, is only another phase of low self-esteem too. It's a way of self-defense, as Liliana was saying just now. And
I think it's connected, this dramatization thing, which just, I think that we that are a bit Latin tend to have this a bit, right?
yes,
I've noticed this on the, yeah, we are
it's
born.
really common.
And one of the things that we learn, I think, with conscienciology and with living in Brazil also helps. Because there's such a different holophosine that you realize that you are stupidly dramatizing something, or you know, and that has to do also with the winning and you know,
Yes,
that kind of thing.
complaining
all the time.
Yes. That's we can say that it's common on Latin culture.
Latin culture takes it
acting
as
like,
if it was natural, normal, and
yes,
okay. And
yes.
and it's not.
That doesn't mean
It doesn't
that you
help.
don't. No, it doesn't help, because in fact you create a situation of entropy, and when that happens, and that will create more entropy than help. And that doesn't mean that you do not have to put your opinion, but that's probably a self-optimizing person will have to understand and to develop better ways to put opinions and to be assertive.
And I also think that when you manage to overcome that bit, and many other bits, but every time you manage to overcome these kind of bottlenecks, because they are bottlenecks in your process of evolution, when you manage to overcome that, there is a liberation of energy that is amazing. Then you can look back and say, wow, look where I was and look where I am today. Kind of.
Yes, that's interesting what you're saying. That's what I put on this analysis here, the presentation, and this conceptual therapeutic way of researching, that are the parameters of self-overcoming, and the things you're going to understand about yourself when you're studying parapathology and confronting it. And as you start to see this kind of thing that you are bringing here, this is important point to take note, that show you another way of reacting or acting, or behaving, and probably you identify that as a better way.
Reacting, right? It's more acting, less reacting.
More acting, exactly. And you can take notes of that, and that will serve for you as a parameter for you. Oh, I know that when I acted like this, it was much better because of this and this and this and this. My energy was like this. My emotions were like this. My mental soma functioning was better because of this and this and this. And then you start to understand. And when you're doing the research, important to take notes of these perceptions, because these these things you turn into writing things that you're going to put on paper after, considering that you want to write a paper or write a book about this subject that you're studying. But this is interesting.
And it's like at the same time they function like markers. Like when you with a different set, like you investigating a different weak trait, because we have many to work on for sure, and we are investigating another one, and then you have that parameters already, those markers that when I'm reacting like that, this is da da da. When I'm acting blah blah, you know, it helps, right?
For example, bringing my own example here. My first book, I understood that, for example, a tendency for passivity that I had, was the weak trait. But then when I studied it, I start to see that this component of self-optimization that can lead to passivity too, and self-evaluation, for example, self-punishment, is something that make you to be to manifest yourself with passivity and accommodation and start to avoid situations, for example. And so the two ideas are connected for me, for example, evolutionary proactivity and anti-victimization. Their two works very well together. And let's say passivity and self-victimization works really bad together. So, of course, you're studying something and you have other weak traits that you have tendency to manifestate on yourself, and probably you're going to study too. But maybe at that time of your life, you identify something that's more important and is bringing more problem to you, to evolve yourself, to move on, to make things happen in your life. So I think that's why we choose a subject, a specific subject, to write a book, for example, considering conscienciology and self-research. Of course, we have to consider that. Okay.
May I ask? You said you were writing about the first subject, and second you were writing about anti-victimization. Would you say the second developed from the first, and was like when you were writing about the first subject, the proactivity, that you somehow figured out the root, which could be the victimization? Would you say that was the dynamic?
I can say there's some roots that are the same, but are really different subjects. And here, focus specifically on this subject, is anti-victimization and self-victimization, and how to confront it and overcome. But they are connected. That I can say. And as I was saying, let's say, the roots that leads to passivity or accommodation, you may have that on self-optimization too. Can be, you can say that is something that that is connected there. You can say that have ideas probably that you can put together there and are really connected. As a mechanism of functioning. That's true. And that probably will be, you know, it's a way of doing research that you can start to research many things on you together, and you have that the weak traits you have and strong traits too, as you want to use them to overcome things. They are really connected with each other, are not isolated. We can say that all together on a group make us as a consciousness. Now, that's what we can say. this group of things of weak traits, strong traits, ways of tendencies, temperament, way of reacting, of acting, as Liliana said. So all of this together, you can say that you will always be able to make connections with your subjects when you're studying conscientiology and weak traits and strong traits. That's I can say that's true. That's you will be able to do that if you start to analyze deeper what you're studying. Yeah, but I can say that the first book leads to the second one. And now, for example, I have the idea of study resilience, have some notes and some material that I start to buy, that I think that it's an important thing for you to keep anti-victimized and to deal with frustration. So they are connected. And I want to, for example, study a little bit more about resilience, and who knows, my idea maybe write a book using this way of research and writing. That is a way of doing it, that I took this for me, and considering everything on my formation, my graduation, my life, things I decided to study, the consciential therapy, everything together, and I really have a good interaction with this way of self-researching, and how can I say that? Learn how to use it to self-research and writing, and everyone can take this and if they see that this can act fine on themselves too, they can take this and start to use too. That's the idea of the presentation here today. Yeah.
And that's the idea of self-consciential therapy, which all of us do at some point or several times in our lives. Yes,
that's the idea. Well, we have, if we're going to make the break, we have 5 more minutes. I don't know. We continue. Let's try to maybe to finish this part of self-investigating here. What do you think?
Yeah, fine.
Okay. So I'll talk just about the frustration here. There's low tolerance to frustration, which ends up influencing other attitudes, reactions, and decisions of self-optimizing conscience. This I put it as an important part and the foundation of all the other reactions that guides a self-optimized person. And I'll talk a little bit more about it. Here's some ideas about parasemiology study concerning to energosoma. So I talk about cardiochakra blockage, condition of blockade cardiochakra, a consequence of emotional instability, for example, self-repression, considering the self-devaluation, considering self-punishment, for example. All this can lead to the cardiochakra blockage, for example. Umbilical chakra blockage too, considering egocentrism, as Liliana said. This condition of energetic neediness is really important. When Liliana told that about whining and complaining, this is a way to vampirize energies. So if you see someone around you, with you, and start to complain and whine, pay attention on your energies, because this person maybe sometimes is trying to vampirize your energy. And in fact, when a person is trying to do it, is not trying to do, because that's not conscious. It's unconscious thing to do. But in fact, a self-optimized person has this need of energy, and whining, complaining is a way to do it. And this is really common. And here about soma too, so parasemiology of soma. I brought you here some examples, but we have lots of books about non-verbal language that you can use, for example, for do this kind of study that I put it here. And I brought you some examples here. So considering consciousness, self-optimized consciousness with tendency of self-punishment, for example, self-devaluation. So it's really common to notice that this person may have dropping shoulders, hand scratching or wounds that show us kind of self-aggression, tendency of looking away, shyness, excessiveness, shyness, look without a spark, without energy, sadness in the eyes. And put it here a line to divide it, considering another part of self-optimization, that is the aggressive part of self-optimization, that are closed fists, crossed arms in front of the thorax, and you have many other examples that are put on the book. And when you're studying a parapathology, you can do this non-verbal study too on anything that you're studying. And not non-verbal study, but you can study other things too. For example, soma disease. On first book, I put some examples there. For example, considering a person with, you say that is a person that looks like being manifesting passivity or accommodation, and if you go to analyze, that person has anemia, for example, that could be a cause for that manifestation, not something more consciential thing or holosomatic, for example. Of course, here is not the idea. Here's another idea that you can do when you're studying soma, and you make you want to see what kind of manifestation can happen on your soma, considering, for example, in this case, self-optimization. So I brought here some example of things that it's common to happen when a self-optimizing person can happen with a self-optimizing person, that is self-perceivedness. So possible conditions of anti-cosmoetical self-perceivedness arising from self-optimization. So I'm frustrated and I deserve that, so I do it. For example, occasional drink or sometimes alcoholism. Consumerism, for example, financial extravagance, overeating or food compulsion, for example. So the person is frustrated and go there and with self-perceivedness and let themselves to get into consumerism, overeating, tobacco use, for example, and other things. And sometimes we have also use of medicine to that. Today is really common. Medicine to sleep, medicine to sadness. In fact, we have medicine for depression, but if the person is frustrated and sad, doesn't mean that they need medicine, for example. But today it's really common to give antidepressive medicine to everyone that comes frustrated or sad for any kind of thing. So we have to pay attention on that too. But and that I put you on the book is another way to study this this condition of parasemiology, considering your soma, for example. Okay. Here are another other subjects that I studied considering self-optimization syndrome. But this I brought you here just to give some examples. I will not have the time to go deeper on these aspects, but just to say that I brought you there. There's some aspects considering the holosoma, but probably when you're studying a parapathology, you may find another subjects that are really common to happen, and you can make a deeper study on your book. For example, negativity, that is a tendency of a self-optimized person, considering that the ones that have this tendency to self-punishment, okay? The study of crime, self-defensive behaviors, absent traits. So these absent traits and self-defensive behaviors are things that you can study in any kind of subject considering a parapathology that you're studying. But most of the time, I use these variables or the things that I identify that are common and make a list, a enumeration, use the enumeration technique. I don't know if this is the way that was translated on 700 experiments, but is the enumeration technique. You can correct me if it's not the correct term. Okay?
No, it's correct.
It's correct, okay. So this is a technique that you can use to develop lots of ideas that you have for your book. Okay, so these are other subjects that I studied on anti-victimization concerning to self-victimization syndrome. Okay, but this is just to exemplify for you that you can go to other things to expand the study you're doing about a parapathology. Okay. Here we are going to enter into paraphysiopathology. Do you want to continue? What do you want to do? What you think it's better?
I would suggest to make a break, right?
Okay.
And to continue in 5 minutes.
Okay.
Would that be okay?
Can have a tea, a coffee.
Okay.
Yeah,
For me,
just
it's okay.
move a little
Juice.
bit and go to the restroom,
Okay,
whatever.
no problem.
Okay, I'll stop the recording and then we will continue, okay?
Okay.